How do I determine the need for my project in a grant application? Well, you should have probably already done that before you started the grant application. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to do that. What are the steps? What are the order of operations? And thinking about the different tools that we have as grant writers and as program designers to answer this question in a grant application. My name is Benjamin Dean. This is grantgetting.com. Thank you so much for jumping in. I hope you enjoyed this video and others like it on the channel aimed at helping you get the most grants that you can. So ideally, you are familiar with a logic model. So the logic model is one of the most important tools for a grant writer to have in terms of being able to succinctly uh, consolidate big ideas of a program into one document, and then to have that document as a reference piece for multiple sections of grant applications. And then, of course, as a reference point for interviews and conversations and all sorts of things. So the logic model is an important tool when thinking about this question. So, what is the need for your project is like saying, what is it that is happening in the environment, in your community, that necessitates whatever it is you're going to tell us you're going to do with our money, right? What is the reason that you are planning to do what you're doing? So this typically then comes from some sort of needs assessment, right? If you're looking to figure out what the need is, the common terminology is a need assessment. And in most community-based organizations, you will hear this talked about as a community needs assessment. And this is typically the first step in determining the project need. And it's done through somewhat of a thorough community needs assessment or surveying or process of going through research and looking at a particular problem from multiple angles. It's gathering data, hearing from stakeholders, understanding really what the gaps are in the community or the population that you're serving, the very specific gaps, plural, because there will be more than just one gap. And so this is sort of a pro tip in thinking about you as a grant writer being involved in a community needs assessment. One might say, and I've certainly heard people say this, I just want to write the grants. I don't want to go way back, upstream and figure out what the needs are. Well, I can tell you, generally speaking, the more integrated a grant writer is with an organization's efforts in terms of research and efforts in terms of program design and program implementation and program evaluation, the easier the grant writing process is and the more successful the grant writing process is. So, of course, what your need is a foundation upon which your grant application is built. So if you have a shaky foundation, even if it's not your fault because it's not your job, you still got a problem. Okay, because a thorough needs assessment or multiple needs assessments or multiple surveys or multiple ways in which you have aggregated third party information to be able to clearly articulate this is a gap, this is a gap, this is a gap, the easier your life is going to be because you will find yourself seeing grant opportunities that you will be more able to apply for legitimately and credibly because you have this foundation set on multiple types of grant buildings. Okay, so whether you're using surveys, focus groups, statistical research, the goal is to demonstrate that whatever the project is addressing a real unmet need. So you'll want to be sure to present your findings clearly in your application by highlighting the most relevant data that supports your project's focus. So there is a bit of cherry picking, of course, because you can't do a thorough needs assessment and then consolidate the whole thing into 400 characters. It's not possible. And that's actually a good thing for you because one needs assessment will, of course, feed into your logic model's situation column, but it will also give you a reference point to begin thinking about combinations of gaps and opportunities in the community upon which you can build new funding streams, new partnerships, new conversations with people. So it really is the first step, having some degree in the organization of an ability to collect information about where the gaps are. Much of this can be done with third party research and sort of drilling down on higher level data collection efforts by economic development organizations, census organizations, county level organizations. There's all sorts of data out there that is now extremely easy to access, and you can logically progress your way from some of that high level data into something specifically in your community. You can do that. But also having your own first party research is an important factor. And that leads us to number two. When doing either your third party or your first party research collection, you want to balance and I would say at least utilize significantly considering significantly both quantitative and qualitative data. Depending on the grant application, you may be heavier or lighter on one or the other, but there are things that can be accomplished with each of them that the other cannot be accomplished. Funders, of course, want to see the actual evidence to back up your claims about the project need. And that's what we're talking about doing this needs assessment. This is where you need to combine your hard data with your stories and your testimonials, the quantitative and the qualitative. And I do think it's important when most of the time when I'm saying data, I am talking about the actual numbers, the calculations that you can make top down, bottom up. But a testimonial and a set of testimonials and a set of stories, those are data points that accomplish something depending on the application much different. So both of those systems in an organization, the system to be able to track the data, showing growth, showing different trends in the community that you're serving, need to be set up, as well as a system to be able to collect stories and collect testimonials in an unbiased way, to catalog them, to reference them, to tag them, to have some way to search them and pull from them and note which one you've used where and when, that sort of system. Because this is, again, part of the tools that you're going to be pulling out of your toolkit. For instance, if you're addressing homelessness, providing statistics on the number of unhoused individuals is a great way to start, but also including stories of those that have been impacted by homelessness, right? And they don't have to be 10-page long stories. They could be a summary of a story that right? You can absolutely and should absolutely ask for the permission to use real names and real details and all of that. But if that permission is not granted, then you just change the personalized information, all of it that you possibly can, to get the essence of that story. Include a disclaimer in wherever it is that you're putting this portion of the story out there, and let it be representative of that individual or those types of individuals in those situations. The balance of data and narrative makes the case for the need stronger. It just psychologically makes it more compelling. If you only use one or the other, you're only going to appeal to one side of the brain. Okay. And you want your grant applications to be fully compelling. Okay, so that's just a quick check mark. As you're looking at having done the needs assessment, having done surveys and interviews, and you have all this, always having a spattering of both. And then finally, in this selection process, how do you select what data to use? How do you select specifically what need is to be addressed by a program? I have never encountered a community-based organization program that solves only one specific need. I've never seen it. Anytime we are going out there in the community and we're doing any of this sort of work, any nonprofit work, whether it's pets, economic, human services, health, um, environmental, whatever the case is, there are always multiple needs that are being addressed. Always. So, first and foremost, you need to have the sort of patience and calmness to be able to step back and really be objective about what it is that you're doing and who and how it impacts the community. Because more times than not, there are unintended consequences that happen because of the activities that you take on that show you that there was actually another gap that you didn't even know existed and now you're filling. That happens all the time. Okay. And so that sort of reflection gives you the ability to do what sort of this step is to pick and choose specifically what need or needs a project covers, it fills within a grant application. Because in any one grant application, you might be able to say, you know what, our program fills one, two, three, four, five needs. But how are you going to articulate all that to a grant maker? And how are you going to do so in such a way that all of these needs then later in the application, you're tying your objective and milestones and goals to? That's a very, very complicated project. And it probably isn't going to help your odds by just throwing in all of the good things that this does. Okay. A lot of times in the needs assessment, one to two needs is all you need. Okay, in order that the grant maker can understand that this project directly fits with their mission. So you're aligning with their goals. Okay, and goals is a little bit different than mission, depending on the grant maker. Many times a grant maker will have an overall mission and then specific goals that they're looking to achieve with a grant program, and other times it's one and the same. The foundation exists to administer this one grant program. Whatever the case is, you're going to increase your chances of securing funding if you can directly line up what it is that your need is with what it is the goal is of this program, this grant program. Okay. In order to do that, you need the community needs assessment. You're probably going to need to be utilizing the logic models, and you're going to need to have this reflection if you've been running a program to be able to really say, what are we doing and how is it working? One way to accomplish this, as a side point, is to actually talk with peer organizations. Many times, peer organizations that are serving the same population that you are, maybe from a different angle, you're providing a health service to individuals, and there's another group providing let's say food assistance to a big chunk of your clients. They may be able to get to know your clients in a way that you don't. They may be able to see a lens into their life in a way that you can't. Okay. And they may be able to say, you know what, we've heard a lot of feedback that your program has had this sort of impact on families, on their kids, on relationships with their, senior grandparents, whatever the case is, that didn't come out in your needs assessment because maybe those individuals just feel more comfortable speaking with another group because of their relationship. That sort of thing happens all the time. So, in thinking about this reflection, always thinking first about peer organizations in addition to the direct clients. Okay, there's a guide in the description below that has 10 tips for determining project need in your grant applications. These will be helpful in clarifying and strengthening your proposals. If you have any challenges with this topic, determining the needs, selecting the needs, setting up all these systems that need to be set up to have a sort of a streamlined way of picking the need for any one grant application, pop it down in the comments. If you have any thoughts at all, be happy to answer any questions there. So thank you so much for jumping in, and we'll see you in the next video.